Hallo und herzlich willkommen zur dritten Folge des Forju Science Sit Down Podcasts. Mein Name ist Una Šarić und ich bin euer Host. Heute rede ich mit Prof. Dr. Senka Holzer. Senka leitet ein großes Forschungsteam am ZMF, Zentrum für medizinische Forschung an der Medizinischen Universität Graz und ist Expertin in allen Sachen Molekularbiologie, besonders in Hinsicht auf Kardiologie. Sie ist aber nicht nur Expertin in der Naturwissenschaft, sondern sie ist auch ein großer Fan von Psychologie und hat auch ein Buch geschrieben. All das, ihre Erkenntnisse aus ihrer Forschung und ihr Werdegang, das darf ich heute mit dir besprechen. Die heutige Folge ist mit einem internationalen Gast, weshalb wir auch auf Englisch reden. Professor Holzer ist nicht nur eine unfassbar erfolgreiche und inspirierende Forscherin, sondern vor allem ein inspirierender Mensch. Ich wünsche euch ganz viel Spaß und dass ihr euch ganz viel aus dieser Folge mitnehmen könnt. Switching now to English, I'd like to heartwarmingly welcome Professor Dr. Senka Holzer. Hi, welcome to our podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure for me to be here.
From our side too. So, Senka, you are a scientist, but also a psychology enthusiast. Why don't we just jump straight in and you tell us how come this combination and why?
Mm-hmm. So that's a really good question. So we go straight to the point. Thinking like, what's my big why? I'd say, it would be nice to say a story like, I want to contribute to the betterment of the world. I want to contribute to some medications, save the world, cure the problems, and so on. But like, if I'm 100% honest, it's nice to have this big picture and know that you do some meaningful work that can contribute to some really good stuff. But I'm also in here for myself. I really love science. I realized that over my career that it's about this curiosity that is intrinsically in myself, and I cannot help it. I've been like that since I can remember myself as a little girl in kindergarten. I wanted to solve puzzles, problems, some games. I was always attracted to this that had this component of putting puzzles together, and I really enjoy it. It brings me this tremendous joy to have these challenging tasks in front of me and trying to see something in a different way that has never been seen before. It's really, really something that excites me. It excites me more now than the day when I started my career. So this is really a gift. I'm there for this pure enjoyment of doing scientific work. And of course, then having this other layer for that to be helpful to the society, to the community, that is just an add-on.
So it sounds like your passion and your work is something like a gift that keeps on giving. So how do you achieve that?
100%, I'd say I consider myself being really lucky ending up at a place where I can say I like my career probably much more than an average aged match control. So people who already spent some 15, 20 years doing the same job. And I was really lucky. I'd say I didn't have a plan when I was in high school or at university that I say, I had it all figured out and I just knew which steps I'm going to do and I knew that this is the job for me. No, there were many different forces, like what I've been told by my parents, what I've been told by my teachers, some things that I already knew by that time about myself that bring me joy. And I had to say, many events that I haven't planned happen, and now I'm here doing this research in cardiology, which brings me a huge joy. And I am here, and the whole psychological part of me here is trying to figure out how can we do that without giving it to just a chance? How can we actively navigate our thoughts and our careers later on to be at the place where we say we really love what we are doing?
So to love what you do, I'm sure that's something like an inspirational dream that every young person would have. And our listeners are also, I would say, young people passionate about science and perhaps also considering a career in science. And the way you frame it, so maybe you can tell us a bit about what you do. So you're a molecular biologist, but you don't sound like, a scientist that's in a lab and has very dry and repetitive work at all. And you don't give the impression that you put yourself in a box. And I think that's something that maybe a prejudice that we might have about working in science.
Yeah, it's definitely not a dry job. It's not a boring job. Every day is very different. Every day brings new challenges. If we could predict what we are going to do tomorrow or in a month, then it wouldn't be science, right? So we have an idea, then we test it, then we figure, it's just not giving the result that we expected. So we have to go back, one step back, and see if this is not happening what we predicted, then what is happening? So what are some alternative ways how our experiments are evolving, and what we need to change, what we need to consider. And this really takes us in such a profoundly different ways that from what we postulated in the beginning. And for me, that's an enjoyable process. So to have this everyday facing unknown and facing a direction that that might be the right one or might be a completely wrong one, then going back, thinking again, repeating this cycle all over and being challenged by that is something that I intrinsically really like. As I said, I did this looking back at myself as a child. I did the similar thing with the games or programs that were available to me at that time. But it can be also very frustrating. So many people don't feel really comfortable in this situation of constant unknowing what's coming up tomorrow. So I think before you jump into a career of a scientist, you should really look a little bit backwards and a little bit inside yourself and see what are the things that really spark the joy for you to be able to know whether you're going to enjoy this process or not. So this can be frustrating and rewarding depending, I think, on the person. Very much depending on the person, because one thing is unknown, the other thing is the frustration of failed experiments that are the regular, you have more failed experiments than the one that's really working and that show you the direction of what is going on in a biological system. And if you don't have tolerance for that, or even I'd say a weird joy for these failed experiments, okay, it's not that thing that I thought now it is, but what can that be? Yeah. The real joy, okay, if that doesn't inspire you, these mistakes, let's call them mistakes, or failed experiments, which are never failed. It's just a piece of information that you still don't know as much as you should to be able to predict what's going to happen in your experiment. If that doesn't spark the joy for you, then I think there are 1,000 of better career choices for you. But if it does, if you're this curious person, always challenges and enjoying them, and then being tremendously rewarded when things actually fall together and when you discovered something new for the first time and be probably many times the first person in the world to know this particular piece of information, it can be beautiful.
So maybe already some things that you're saying, and this is producing some feelings and sentiments in members of our audience. And so let's dig a bit deeper there. You were already mentioning a few times something about intrinsic motivations and whether the way you phrase your questions and your phrases, it's often all around asking yourself and kind of not producing new ways, not producing knowledge to reflect, but rather, as you said, going back to the past, going back to when you were a child, kind of this way of knowing yourself. Yeah. And maybe, we can super elaborate there.
Super important point is this intrinsic motivation, really knowing what triggers the spark for you. And I think if we would have enough time to reflect and remember and like really observe, it would be the best to observe ourselves in the past in like some specific situation. It would be so easy to find those patterns of behavior or where we are naturally driven to. And if we know that, then it's really easy, much easier for you to decide on your career path. But because these forces of our intrinsic motivation and what really sparks the joy for us are then really early in our life, mixed with many external advices of what society, parents, all other systems in our life are suggesting us that is going to bring us lasting satisfaction and happiness and prosperous career and so on. And then those files are mixed and we don't have enough experience to decide what is right, what's going to work for us or not. We're being convinced that things like, let's say, a stable job or, I don't know, maybe a public sector or whatever advice we get, we're turned into one particular direction without really reflecting who we are, what is our intrinsic motivation. And this is I think, one of the most important things that one should consider when deciding on a career path. But it starts even earlier than that. It starts understanding how we are functioning as human beings and then going into specifics.
It sounds like your view of, I think, persons is that we're very constant and that everything is in us and we just constantly have to go back to this. But is this like really the case? Aren't we always evolving? Like I'm not the same that I was a year ago.
That's true. We are continuously evolving, but there are some things that stays the same. I like to call it our psychological DNA, just as we have evidence that we have physical properties that are imprinted in our physical DNA, like your eye color or your hair color or how tall you're going to be, and this is all found in your gene. But somehow there is something to this also, our psychological traits, and we start to understand more and more. Of course, it's not that easy to match this trait because there are so many factors that are influencing it, and it's not in the physical world, so we cannot really measure it 100% in the lab and tie it to a specific gene. So this research is much more complicated and requires a huge sample to be able to determine. But there is more and more evidence that also such traits as a character trait, some traits as values, personal values and choices, that they do have some percentage how they're already imprinted in our DNA or is something that is a characteristic that we carried into this world when we were born. So it's very opposite standpoint of what is commonly taught, that we are psychologically born and we have like this very empty space in our brain that has to be filled with different ideas and morals and so on. But more and more studies are actually proving that the opposite is the case, that we come into this world with the potential for kindness, with the capacity for altruism and so on, and that it is in our genes. But as I said, it gets interfered with many different external forces, and we're mixing those internal files, internal values with extrinsic ones.
This was already a brilliant teaser and very interesting teaser to your research. So as we heard in the intro, Senka is not just a scientist, she's also an author. You wrote a great book.
Thank
you. And maybe what you just told us on this research, maybe we can try to give it like some terms. So if you want to do an introduction to your research, and then also what is in the book.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to start a little bit before my book, because I didn't write the book and I didn't start this research from scratch. So I built it up on a body of amazing evidence from another scientist. The one that I really want to mention that really is the starting point of all my thinking and also on all my practical behaviors in my life, how I care about myself and my well-being, is the self-determination theory, which is the theory about this intrinsic motivation. And it says that we as human beings, we have 3 basic psychological needs, which need to be fulfilled, not at every moment of our life, all 3 of them, but they have to work in general. So they think somehow it's like a table, and then if you have just 2 legs, there's no way that that's going to be a stable table, right? But then if you have 3, then you can make it really stable. So you can imagine it as 3 pillars or 3 legs of the tables that you need to have that stability in your life. So these 3 needs are to feel autonomous, so to really have this intrinsic feeling that you're living your life in a way that makes sense for you, that you choose to do. The second need is that we need connectedness, good relationship in our life, and it's really not 1,000 likes and very surface-like relationship, but really deep one that you can count on in the deep, darkest moment of your life for those people to be there. So these are the relationships that count. And then the third one is the need for competence. And the competence is defined in a way that you contribute to the society on one hand, so you have to contribute to something that is beyond yourself to have this feeling of competence, and that you are fulfilling your potential, that you're challenged and you're fulfilling your potential. So all these 3 areas need to be well balanced and covered in your life to be able to have these very stable levels of well-being. And now we have there a discrepancy, what the society says to us that we need in order to be in good relationships. So we can think about anything. So what is society suggesting you how to attract the best partner, for example? Mm-hmm. It comes down to some appearance and exercise and whatsoever, or be famous or have the most followers or whatsoever. So there's like an advice coming from the society, but then you, for your really working relationship, it can be something totally different. And it's in most of the cases something totally different. And the same thing is like what society tells you, how you will feel fulfilled how will you feel fulfilled in your career. You need success, you need external reward, you need respect from other people, you need climbing the ladder and so on, without really looking into that. How do you personally fulfill this need to be challenged and to contribute to the society? And that can be very, very different. In my case, it's also very, very different from what advice I was getting to what it really turned to be working out for me later on. So this was the starting point, and then through my research, we realized that all of those needs will be fulfilled for different people through acting on different sets of values. And in our work, we also find out that a value system of every individual is a mixture of the values that they have intrinsically. We call them our core values. It's something that has always been part of you, and you cannot help it. It will always be part of you. And those extrinsic values that are coming from these external advices, and we internalize them. So we think they are our values, but they are not in our psychological DNA.
And on internalization, can we even escape that? Because I don't think that most people one of the beauties of science or of knowledge in general is that just your whole worldview changes each time you add a puzzle piece to it. But just thinking on the school system, on general awareness of psychological well-being, I would really struggle to understand and imagine where most of the population would get this knowledge from. So what can we do about it? And what has to change that this becomes more common?
So I think we can't escape. I think these what we call extrinsic or acquired values they're not all that bad per se. So it's also not something that I'm trying to advocate, just we should get rid of all those values. No. They're useful in a way that they help us function in a society, in a specific culture, or in a specific setting, or in a specific company. Because if we don't have standards and everybody just do what they want, and it would make things really, really difficult. So we need to have some common denominators, and they are defined by the higher entity than ourselves. It's our institution, organization, culture, and etc. But we need awareness of what our values are. We need to strengthen that muscle really, really from the beginning on, and really ask ourselves way more often than we do what really sparked the joy for these best moments of our life, and what was hurt in the moments where we really feel low. And when we understand that, then we can actively navigate either to bring more of the things that are aligned with our values to our life, or to see how we can look at the situation differently that we are, be it a working situation, be it the new culture that we are experiencing, anything that feels uncomfortable, we can look from different perspective, from different angle, and see how we can change the way we see the situation from the lens of our own values. This is possible to do. I did that many times. It just takes time and dedication.
Do you have an example on how this look like, and also how it immediately can, put you from a bad mood, a bad negative emotions to, back into an equilibrium?
It's a great question. So I do have a direct example. The first one that I probably have many, but the first one that comes to mind is academia. So I've been working in the setting of academia for quite a long time, and the number one value of the academic setting is excellence. So we all are sort of scanned through the lens of excellence, and this is how we're being rewarded or not rewarded. Everything has to do something with excellence. And now this is not my personal value. This is not the value, that is somehow intrinsically in my DNA. And when I'm focusing on excellence too much, I actually start feeling anxiety. I start not really liking what I do. It's like I feel that I'm moving away from who I am. I'm not being centered. But I don't have to live that value day to day. Okay. I can frame my work and see what other values it can support, and look at it on a daily basis through the lens of different values, like motivating others is one of the huge values in my value system. And I get the chance to motivate my students, to motivate my group, other researchers. I get the chance to do that every day.
As young people.
Yes, of course. And it's a beautiful part of my job. And then another thing is this curiosity. And I get to nurture that every day, this feeling like you have those pieces of puzzle, you have no idea how to put them together, but you're trying and trying and trying. And for me, it's like a game, for me, it's a better game than a slot machine. I think I'm more addicted to that than I would ever be addicted to anything else. So this is another value that I can nurture through my work. I know that I'll be scanned through the lens of value excellence, and I know that I have to keep in mind as the big picture, because I have to demonstrate the parameters of excellence if I want to survive in an academic setting, but I don't have to focus on it day to day. I can still live academic life focusing on my values of motivation, of curiosity, of progress, of out of the box ideas and open-mindedness, optimism, but then every now and then be reminded that I have to write and report, and I have to put the hat of excellence and just write what has to be written and demonstrate this value to be able to continue my work there. But it doesn't have to be the one dominating my life. And when we are able to separate this or navigate this in this active and conscious way, our work can become really beautiful.
So your approach would So your approach would be like, you don't even request society to become a utopia where everybody can be fully authentic themselves. You just say that we have to learn how to use all these sides that are in us and then find a balance, right? Because I guess for you, well, excellence, is not it for you personally and entirely on a voluntary basis, but you would still say that it's worth it for you because it enables you to pursue your other passions inside of you.
Yes, but that's the thing. Not every job could do that, and this is something that we have to set. Sometimes there's no compromise. Sometimes it's just not working for our values so much that we could use the current job as a jumping board for something better for ourselves. But with this knowledge, what really didn't work and what we really, really need in order to feel good. So I think just like surgically removing all the acquired values from our life, it's not something that we should strive to. And I don't really think it's possible because on the other hand, we really want to stay part of the society that we are living in.
The point on excellence is interesting. I mean, all the points are interesting, but I feel like, everybody from every possible way you can imagine it, not only to like pressure to in school and university to perform, everything is on performance, on grades, whether you deliver or not. Human aspect, like there's more awareness of it, and I'm not saying it's intrinsically bad to try to achieve like as much as you can, of course, to an extent where it makes it happy. But I found it really interesting when shortly after that you said that when you connected it within your own values, which looked more like, motivation and curiosity. And that makes me think, is it possible that like many of us, we call ourselves perfectionists and, we want all the productivity hacks. We would ideally wake up at 5 a.m. and achieve everything as much as we can in our 24 hours and, be productive as much as we can. Is it possible that we're just like internalizing this and this is actually like that maybe we don't want to be excellent, we just want to be, for example, motivating or motivated. We want to be free, inspired, etc.
It is possible. There are people that have excellence, and I met them throughout my work, that have excellence as a core value, and they see it as something super positive, and then when they are aligned with this value, they actually feel great. But then on the other hand, there are people like me where I've proved myself many times that this is not an intrinsic value of mine, and I know how it makes me feel. And as I already said, like when you start feeling this anxiety or like doubt or judgment, then you are on a track of fulfilling an extrinsic motivator.
So judgment by yourself, or how does it feel if you're living an inauthentic value?
Yeah, judgment both towards yourself, a big one, and also towards others. Like normally when we are operating within our core value system, we don't feel judgmental, we feel supportive. If we see a person who does not exhibit our core value, we are like, oh, I want to help you to do more of that because it's so super. We are really open, motivated for something better. Whereas when we see that the person is not fulfilling the value that we acquired, and it's our extrinsic value, we start being to know, oh, how can this person or how can they not fulfill this value? We go immediately in this judgmental mode. And it's also something that we do to ourselves. I should be better, I should have done this, and so on and so on. So when we notice this judgment, then we know that has something to do with this extrinsic expectations and so on. So I'd say it's very different. I've seen people on spectrum of every single value being very core and very acquired for them. So I'd say it's really, really individual. It's how you interpret. And it's not only about the value. When we say excellence, every one of us will have a different definition of it. So it's also the way how you perceive this value, what it means for you, and what your belief attached to this value is. What is this value bringing to you in your life? So it has so many layers, and that's why I think it's really a personalized approach that needs to be taken, because there's no one size fit all. We need to know what's our spark. We need to know what value is there for us to really is our highway or shortcut to feel, as I said, autonomous, connected, and competent.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess just happier and more content long term. Maybe also
yes,
stable.
There is a direct correlation when we have our 3 basic psychological needs working and feeling that we are fulfilling them in our life. There is a direct positive correlation to the well-being. So the feeling of the general satisfaction with our life. That doesn't mean that we are not experiencing bad moments and moments of annoyance, anxiety, and so on. But we have this general feeling that our life as a whole is functioning and is going in the right direction.
Do you think that this feeling is contagious?
I do think so. If we are surrounded by people who are authentically happy and satisfied with their life, it must be contagious. I think all these feelings are anyway some sort of energy, and if you put yourself in a positive energy, it's gonna affect you. There's no way around that. And there's actually a work showing that, but more for the negative emotions, that if you are surrounded by people who are experiencing really negative thoughts and so on, or looking in a very negative movies, and so that your mood will also suffer. But I think more than this, how we feel moment to moment and day by day is this like general feeling that our life is going in the right direction. This is something we there are 2 different types of happiness. So not this affective, this moment happiness, but we're looking for this deep fulfillment, that things are okay in general, and I can feel within this frame okay or less okay. But this long-term feeling of happiness is coming for connecting our real core values to our basic psychological needs, and then ultimately out of that the good levels of well-being and happiness are going to arise.
Thank you. That was a very nice analysis. So far we had, do we want to sum it up quickly for our audience at this point? So what did we have? We had the 3 basic psychological needs.
Yeah, I think this should be taught in school. I think it's a crime against young people who are developing and trying to figure their way out, that they don't have this information in their regular education, or what we as a human beings really need, and what is the basis that on which we can build a good life. I think it should really be taught in schools. So I'd advise every single young person out there to get really familiarized with this self-determination theory and 3 basic psychological needs, and start from there. And then every need is fulfilled through different values. So spend some time there figuring what your core values are and what your acquired values are. Your core values are those that when you think of them, you just know that it's part of you and that you cannot escape, and you feel good about it. Mm-hmm. And then, I can give you an example for that. I had a person that I worked with, and they said that this value of adventure was always there, and they tried school and parents. They were like, you're always getting yourself in troubles, you shouldn't be doing that, and why can't you just be calm and normal as your school kids and so on. This person, they just couldn't escape that. It was part of who they are, and the moment they kind of grew up and could live their own life, they figured, yes, I traveled to all the weirdest part of the world, and I explore different cultures, and I finally feel free. So this is you really can't help it to be that. Even if all the forces, external forces are against that, you still come back to that. These are your core values. And then your acquired values are those that really put you at this place where you feel judgmental toward yourself and others, or feel anxiety, and is pretty much always connected to I should have and I should. So for me, those are like, I'd say 3 terms that sum up really the basis of the potential to live a happy life and choose the career that will really bring you some satisfaction. Because if you choose the career that does not, this is like my biggest message probably, I say it to every young person out there, if you choose a career which does not fulfill at least one of the 3 basic psychological needs, run. Or like look, because you don't want to be wasting 8 hours a day at something that doesn't bring any of this to your life, because then you will have problems in your free time or time out of work, because you will try to squeeze all the 3 needs in that time, and you'll do it unconsciously because you're always driven to these 3 needs. And you will feel the need to have them, and then you will have conflicting schedules, because it's always going to be between the time with your friends and family and things that you want to do for yourself, and then also you want to feel competent, so you'll put some hobbies or things in that, or some side businesses and some side. And if you try to squeeze all of that in your free time, you have no chances, because none of it will be working. So if you spend 8 hours a day somewhere, it needs to fulfill at least 1, ideally 2 of your basic psychological needs.
And this might happen, and you might not even do it on purpose, because how would you know? You just maybe make your work and your path dependent on some factors that you didn't even know were the wrong ones.
That's why we need this knowledge. We need the tools to understand these terms, and then be able to assess our career and our life through these terms on a daily basis. And it can start off bad, and it can improve with our active engagement, as it was for me in a function in the value of excellence. Or it can be the other way around. We start okay, but then we see that the culture is like changing our values, and that we are becoming the person that we don't really necessarily want to be, and that our mind is reminding us on the values that don't really, have this spark and motivation for us. And then we know it's time to go. Or we can try to reframe our work. I would always give it a try first, and if it really doesn't work, then use it as a jumping board and learn something from it, and go for the next thing that will at least, as I said, satisfy at least 1 of those basic psychological needs for you.
So is this advice that you would give to young persons? Because this information is endlessly valuable. And I think that hearing it as a young person makes it even more so valuable, because you can simply spend more time of your life applying it. So, while we are in our 20s, say, and we're figuring out not only who we are and what we want, but actually still like already making steps on what we're going to do. You hinted already like on your approach, but can you give us your personal advice that you think that, a young high school graduate would need to hear, and also a second question that a second aspect that I would like to add, because I'm at that age, and I know that it's a factor for young people. Sometimes too much change and not having a straightforward path can like really trouble you internally. So how can we balance this kind of, on one hand, having a perspective and knowing where we're going, but also figuring out who we are and how to, in our day-to-day life, live authentically?
Yeah, it's really hard, to think about it and then choose a perfect career. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work. It didn't work for me, and I know very few people who could figure out upfront what they want to do, like 100%. So no matter how much we journal and reflect, it's just... You can get really valuable input from your own journaling, like extremely valuable input, and you can try to apply it, but it's still going to be a trial and error, and it's really important that you take it actively. And that you really try to reflect and understand what worked, what didn't, and be flexible with it. See what you can do, if you can navigate it in a specific direction, or there is really nothing that can satisfy you from the situation and you need to leave. But I think it's just the awareness that you need, like take it with your blanket, cover up yourself completely in this awareness, what really makes you tick. Mm-hmm. And what really makes you happy, and try to see whether that's something that your job can one way or the other bring, and if not, then you know that long-term staying in such a situation will affect your well-being in a negative way, which you don't want to happen, right? So yes, it would be an advice, just try to get as much as possible information about yourself and your reactions to specific things, your feelings about specific things, and then take the journey, follow the journey, see how you can actively tweak it, and if it works, great. If not, it's a learning, let's say it's a valuable learning that you need for a better future. But one thing that I really don't want to miss saying, let's say, is that the values are changing. The values, the extrinsic value, are changing tremendously, because you can already, when you're in your late 20s, you already know how much those extrinsic values change. You start in school, and when you're really young, I don't know, the value, who are the popular kids, those that are, I don't know, funny maybe, and like being very extroverted and so on. But then at some point that's really not important. Then you move to the next stage, you go to university. There it's really important that you have good grades, and whether you're funny doesn't matter as much anymore. And then when you go to the next stage of your life, then it's all about the achievement and all about materialization of some sort of the showing that you're successful and so on. So these external measures, they always change, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why we can get into a trap following or pursuing extrinsic value that 10 years from now will completely change.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then we have our future self being really disappointed because we went for something, we achieved it, and figure, oh, that's not it, it's not working for me. That's why it's so important to also explore your core values, because those core values are stable over time.
They're always in trend.
They are there. They change, like the specific needs, like how intensively they're present in your life and your need to satisfy them. That's going to change a little bit, of course, because when you are freshly married, then you're going to think more about the need for relatedness when you get kids anyways, and you can forget your autonomy at that stage. On the other hand, when you get a new job or you just land your dream promotion, you're going to press the gas pedal more on your competence need and so on. So they're going to change in the level how much they're present in your life, but like they're going to stay the same. The way your best relationship worked, it's going to be the same. The way you feel confident, like this one value that they can put it down to, like motivation or curiosity, for me 1 or 2, 3 values maximum, that's going to be the same for you. Just the way it manifests in your life is going to change. But because we are driven to these extrinsic values, acquired values, which are changing at much higher pace, because as I said, the society wants from you different things in the different stages of your life, then you can be pursuing the value that doesn't really have anything for you 10 years from now. So this is really important to understand. This is why I would really, really advise everyone to explore their core values and have them somehow present in their career one way or the other.
And even if societal values wouldn't change, I feel like our environments change. And, already at 19, I guess, I've made the observation that, there is always going to be people that are not going to be happy or have a judgment, but then, so, it's like, what do you have to lose? Maybe you really just start living for yourself. And I really like this idea of everything is already in you, like the way you put it with the psychological DNA. And of course you explain that the intensity is just, it's inherent that it's gonna like shift and change, but it's always gonna come back because there are different seasons of life, and that's a very natural process, right? It's different each age or which stage you are. But this idea that you don't need to copy someone else, you don't need to copy some expectations of somebody or some agent, that everything is in you already. And I think that's a very nice thing to hear when you're kind of like young and maybe lost or something.
Yeah, definitely. We have so much more potential than we are giving credit to at this young age. This is something maybe now slowly changing a little bit with the new generations. There is a little bit among young parents, this awareness is rising a little bit, that kids are not born into this world without any empathy or any feelings or any like internal compass. This is changing a little bit, but I still do think that the parents really want best for their kids. And it comes from fear that they won't provide all the best for their kids, that they try to navigate. So I always say this acquired values, they start with a good intention, always, especially from family and from parents. And being a parent myself, I know that intention, whatever you do it from like the best, purest heart and best intentions you have. But that does not necessarily will work for your kids, neither for their character, neither for the world that they will live in, because the world today is changing at such tremendous pace that the advice that I've been getting as a child does not work for me at all, because we are living in a completely different world. And let alone also the global migrations that are happening more and more, and the probability that a person will spend their life in the same place now is like so minor compared as it was, for example, 30-40 years ago. No.
So what are tools that you can suggest our audience to be prepared for all these external influences? Because maybe if I'm in my 20s and I'm trying to do something different, my parents will, as you said, out of love and fear, try to hold me back from something, and we can't assume ideal conditions.
Yeah, reflect what's in there for them. Have more conversation. Figure out why they think that's important. Then also do the exploration of your own stuff and your own path, and then always take in consideration one and the other, and try to figure out your own path, but also considering all this advice that you're given. Because also it's on one hand, yes, extrinsic values, but then experience is something that we shouldn't underestimate there. They do have more experience. I also know when my kids are now small and they just simply lack experience, like I can tell 20,000 times, this is hot, you're going to burn yourself. Until they try it and burn themselves, that it just doesn't work. So sometimes I know that I have experience that would save them some pain. So it's not that all advice is just bad and not working. But as you follow this advice, always ask a lot of questions. Why do you think so? And try to figure out how that worked in their time, this advice, and why it worked. Why do they really strongly believe this is a good advice? And then try to put together with them, ideally, this in the setting of a modern world and how things are now and the change thing, and see where you land there. And as said, you will start in one way and your path can take you in a million different directions. If you actively follow and navigate, and when you know what you really want, a really unexpected door will open for you. That's also something really that I see very often, that when people like get this awareness, oh yeah, that's the thing, that works for me, that's the direction where I want to go, that there will be some directions that they could not have imagined before. I could say the same thing for myself. I really wanted to be a scientist back then when I was studying or end of my high school. but like that I could have imagined all the things that happened in my career so far, absolutely not. So let the path surprise you in a positive way, but be certain that you're doing something that is aligned with at least one of those 3 basic psychological needs.
Thank you so much for all of your insights into the science of being and becoming your authentic self. For our listeners, if this got you curious, there is a book. It's called Be You.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be the guest in your podcast. This was really a pleasure, and I hope to reconnect and hear the feedback from your audience. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, it was also our pleasure, and see you soon, hopefully. Thank you to our audience for listening. We hope that you could learn something new and that you feel inspired. And now it's up to you to go ahead and apply this knowledge into your daily life. We hope you like this episode, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.